So I got on the radio and I immediately told them to alter hard to starboard. I said, you're about to collide with me, and stand by to pick me up if I survive.
Last time, on sailing Kittiwake, we had the best sailing day of the year, followed by a horrible night stuck in fog. We also explored the beautiful cities of Aveiro and Porto. In this episode, we enjoy some fast downwind sailing in the Portuguese trade winds, interview a solo sailing legend, and explore some of the beautiful coastline near Cascais.
She said, how could you joke at a time like this? I know why, 'cause this is what you wanted all along now, isn't it?
After a night in the marina at Figueira de Foz, we were fueled up and raring to go. We headed out bound for Peniche, but sailed straight into another foggy night on the Portuguese coast.
That never stopped you before, don't let it get in your way. Those are her words, not mine. As far as I'm concerned, we could have had a good time. So if you walk out that door in disgust, I guess there's nothing more to discuss. Birds don't sing, they just fall from the sky. Girls don't call and they never tell you why. That's just how they say goodbye.
The sail down from Figueira to Peniche was quite challenging. We have no footage of it because we were basically in the fog for all of the sail. The visibility forecast was completely wrong. We thought we had about an hour of low visibility to start off with, and then it would clear up, but that didn't happen. So we had to hand steer all the way down here, and we spent all night doing 1 hour shifts because the person on watch would have to steer and blow the foghorn as well. It was really tiring, and obviously we didn't get any sleep whatsoever because if we were inside to rest and get warm, the foghorn would blow every minute, so it was impossible to get any sort of rest. But thankfully getting into Peniche wasn't too bad. The sky cleared up quite a bit, and we managed to come in quite easily, even though it was full of fishing boats with really tiny lights. So we got here about 6:30 a.m. or something like that, and in this far south it's still dark. It's dark until about 7 a.m. and we spent a night at anchor in the harbour at Peniche, which is the only anchorage in the area, but we got moved today by the police, the maritime police, because apparently we were on the wrong side of a buoy, which didn't look anything like a marker buoy. It looked just like a mooring ball. But yeah, we're on the right side of the buoy right now, and we know for a fact, because we went out of the harbour to try and anchor outside, that all the sailboats out there, at least 8 or 10 sailboats, were kicked out by the maritime police as well, because apparently it's not allowed to anchor over there. It's 5 a.m, there's no fog, and we're getting ready to sail to Cascais. Fingers crossed we'll be there before evening, and it's going to stay clear skies.
Don't listen to my music. Don't lie in my bed. you might have actually said. 'Cause those are my words, not yours. As far as I'm concerned, it could have been a lot worse. I wasn't trying to avoid the confrontation. She isn't crying, she's just making conversation. Words don't sing, they just fall on the step. Girls don't call and they never tell you why. That's just how they say goodbye.
So we're about 8 miles from Cascais, so we've done about 40 miles today, which is good, pretty good going, and it was worth getting up early so that we can get there in decent time and while it's still light. The wind's been really good all day, mostly from behind, around 10 to 15 knots, so we've had the cruising chute up, but just as we've turned the corner to kind of come down to Cascais, the wind picked up quite a lot and the cruising chute was under quite a lot of tension, so we swapped it for the Genoa, but because we've only got one Genoa winch or sheet winch, we had to try and basically just hold on to the cruising sheet, which didn't really work out very well because it's only like a skinny 8mm sheet, but we managed to get it down and now we're quite happily bobbing along under the Genoa.
That's just how they say goodbye.
We arrived into Cascais to a well-sheltered anchorage and were followed in by a big pirate ship. After a good rest, we got up to explore the coast and hopefully find a crag to go climbing.
I've been waiting such a long, long time for you to realize. If you don't get what you want in life, it's a healthy exercise. Life was not your senses. Prepare to increase your chances. When the wolf right at your doorstep, you see what you're from.
We came all the way to Bocca d'Inferno with all our climbing stuff, hoping to go climb some sea cliffs finally. But I don't know whether you can see at my back how the waves are just engulfing the whole of the wall that we were going to climb. So yeah, it's not happening today.
I've been standing in the shadows just waiting for you to take a chance. One thing that you should know, you cannot be too old to learn to dance. Life was not your senses. Prepare to increase your chances. With the wolf right at your doorstep, you see what you're from. Get in return, you twist and you turn, all the bridges burn. While I'm far away, all you want is to decide to run back to the start.
So yesterday we sailed to Sesimbra with our friend Denis on Lizzie G, and then we went out for a nice meal and some lovely fish. It's nice to have someone to sail with, which we haven't experienced yet.
Sailing down the coast of Portugal, we made friends with a guy called Denis Gorman. He is a Scottish guy who is a single-handed sailor, sailing on a 27-foot Albin Vega. He's sailed it across the North Atlantic from east to west as part of the Jester challenge, and he's got some pretty cool stories to tell, so we thought we'd do a quick interview with him so that you can hear those stories. So in comparison to the trade wind sailing route that people think of about crossing the Atlantic, what's it like to sail east to west across the North Atlantic?
It is completely different. It is the difference between taking a walk in the park and climbing a mountain, quite literally. The statistics of doing that particular voyage are actually quite alarming. 1 in 100 people tend to suffer serious injury or death. There are a number of boats that break up or come to grief. The actual voyage itself is completely different to the trade winds routes because you're going against the prevailing winds and the depressions coming from up from the Caribbean, up the eastern freeboard of America and across the Atlantic towards the UK. You've also got higher, the waves are higher, the winds are stronger. You've got a Gulf Stream pushing against you, and there's also the threat of icebergs, growlers, that type of thing, cold water, and when you do get far out to the west and you're trying to make your approaches towards land, you're going into the Newfoundland current, the polar current that is coming down from the ice pack, which is cold. It brings sometimes calm winds, which can be very frustrating, but it also brings very dense fog. And all of these things you're not going to find going from the Canary Islands to St. Lucia. Down there you're going to have warm weather, flat seas, a prevailing wind. You're not going to have any of those difficulties. But up north it's a completely different ball game. It really is an uphill struggle the whole way, and it is relentless. It seems to sort of like never stop. Day 46, I'd been immersed in fog for about 4 days. I was coming towards the Nantucket Shoals. I was perhaps about 300 miles offshore, and the fog had cleared, and I was going back into sort of regular sleep pattern of an hour, sleeping for an hour at a time. I was in a very deep sleep. I was very, very tired when my little AIS radar alarm bleeped out a warning that a ship had come into my area. And that ship was a ship called Sealand Racer. He was at my 4-mile perimeter. He was coming along about 20 knots, 32,000 ton container ship travelling very fast, bang on a collision course with me. I went up into the cockpit and I noticed on my starboard side, a couple of miles out, there was the lights of another small vessel. And then I looked to the port side and I could see the triangulation of lights from Sealand Racer, red, white and green. And I called Sealand Racer up and I told them that I had them on my AIS and that we were about to collide. Could they please alter? And they said to me that they confirmed that they'd seen me. They picked me up on radar and they had me visually. And I thought all was well. Now, I did something that was very foolish. Normally what you do is you'd sit and observe and make sure that the course correction actually happens. But I was really tired, and we're all fallible. And what I thought was, well, they confirmed everything's good, so I'll switch the alarm off the IS. I'll get my head down for 15 minutes and then I'll get up and I'll set the alarm again and I'll get ready should there be another ship, and we'll carry on with that sleep pattern. And I lay down on my bunk, put my head on the pillow and was falling off to sleep when I suddenly had this thought that actually, although I told them that I was in front of them and they said that they saw me, perhaps it wasn't me that they'd seen, but the other boat that was on my starboard side. So when that thought occurred to me, I suddenly kind of sprang up an alarm, checked the AIS again. I saw on the screen that in fact they hadn't altered course. They were at 0.8 of a mile away from me, heading for a collision at pretty much their full speed. So I got on the radio and I immediately told them to alter hard to starboard. I said, you're about to collide with me, and stand by to pick me up if I survive. And I then went into the cockpit, tried to start the engine, and the engine wouldn't start, because that's one of the kind of faults you get with these things, is that things sometimes don't work when you want them to. And so our fate lay in the hands of the deck officers on that ship at that point in time. I heard a call coming back that Roger, we're going hard to starboard, and they did, but it was very, very close. I ran off the bows of that ship and right down her entire length, and her port quarter was within a few feet of me as she careened past. And Lizzie G and I, we ended up in the phosphorescent wash of those propellers, bobbing from side to side, and we realised we'd come very, very close to complete catastrophe.
Thanks for watching this episode. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, and if you've not subscribed, then don't forget to do so. If you'd like to support our journey, you can do so through Patreon or by recommending us for some freelance web design or copywriting work through our website seawolfdigital.co.uk. If you'd like to know more about Denis's adventures, then you can find his book A Voyage to the Sea on Amazon. Join us next time as we head to the Algarve